Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my first The Dragon Prince video. This is going to be my review for episode 1 of The Dragon Prince, and that one is called Echoes of Thunder. So the show has just come out today, I think just an hour or so ago. And yeah, I'm going to be reviewing the first episode here. I suppose I'll reveal it right now. I probably will be reviewing the rest of the episodes. I liked the first episode enough to where I want to see a bit more, and we'll see where we go. It's only 9 episodes in this season, I think the weird thing is that I don't even know if it's like a thing where it's like just a individual season or if there's more. I think they have panels planned for upcoming conventions, and I don't really see why they do that if this was all there was. Plus, I think knowing stuff about the company when it formed, their plan was for something really big. So I think this is just the start, but it's interesting that they haven't really talked about that all that much. The way they've done information on this show prior to release has been a little bit weird. They've mentioned names of characters a lot. The initial trailer wasn't particularly great. Second trailer was obviously much better, but they've been surprisingly not overly open about like stuff like how many seasons are planned and the rest of the stuff. But anyway, so yeah, I'll be reviewing the rest of the episodes. The basic plan for that will be, next video will be episode 2 and 3. Then we'll do 4, 5, and 6. And then the last video for the day will be 7, 8, and 9. So 3 more videos. But anyway, let's go into episode 1, Echoes of Thunder. What I liked about it was that I liked that it kind of had a very similar thing to Avatar at the start, where they just open you up with, yeah, this is a new universe, here's the situation at hand, here's what's going on, here's an idea about how this fictional world works, there's magic, there's 7 forms of magic, and what was it? It was sun, moon, stars, earth, ocean, sky, and then dark is kind of the one that the humans kind of discover, and it's like the evil form of magic. Which I found interesting in that they immediately kind of confirmed to us, okay, moon magic, the moon shadow elves, that's what they're doing. Harrow made some point about, you know, like we have to make sure while the sun is still up that it works. Partly, I think, just because the moon would then come up, so I don't think it's necessarily any sort of a thing where like humans have sun magic by default, but just that that's a thing. Star magic seems very, very interesting to me, depending on what they do with it, in that, given that, like, the sun obviously is a star, but I assume they're just referring to, like, it's basically meant to be, like, cosmos magic kind of type thing, space magic. That'll be interesting to see if anyone actually uses that. Then the more directly like earth-based magic, obviously the land, which I assume will be kind of earth-bending, though used in a more magic sense. Ocean, of course, water, that makes sense. And then sky, I'm taking to sort of be thunder, which is probably what the King of the Dragons kind of special kind of power was about, but it could also be wind as well. So that was cool. And then the basic plot setup being that, okay, it is basically humans made this mistake, or at least one human made this mistake, discovering dark magic, and then using it to, like, attack. And basically, they more or less say, like, about a year ago, or a year and a bit ago, the humans launched an attack and killed the King of the Dragons using dark magic. And so in response to this, the other groups of people, mainly just the elves, full stop, and the dragons, but the people just looked like they wore sort of like dragon armor, so it kind of confused me a little bit in that, like, wait, are they trying to say that in this show, like, humans transform into dragons, or are they just the specific people who happen to, like, worship dragons the most, and they base their culture around that, or is there something else going on here? Because there are actual dragons, and then specifically mentioning an egg makes me not go with the idea that they're, like, can transform into humans, so I assume it's just the people who mainly support the dragons. They kind of isolate humans in the west part of the world, and so there is this kind of east-west divide, and so on. I might be getting the exact timeline of this mixed up. I think they isolated them beforehand because they didn't like the dark magic, and then the attack came in that killed the King of the Dragons. And obviously, the worst thing that they did was they also killed the egg. So they killed the Dragon Prince as such, which is quite interesting. Now, the big question, I suppose, in all of this is like, okay, Callum seems to be our main character, but he's the step prince of the humans, and he's obviously not biologically related, I don't think, to King Harrow. So, where did he come from? Like, is it just a friend of Harrow's who maybe died and he took in? Given that he has a son, when did this adoption take place? Is it more recent, or has it been the case for a while? And then, if it is a thing where humans can transform into dragons, is it kind of like, is he the Dragon Prince or what? Obviously, this is just really early speculation, only having watched the very first episode. But I did find that like interesting that there is this just consistent mystery in the start of just the main character is in a position where it's somewhat unexplained, and they specifically say step prince and not like half brother or anything like that. So clearly saying adoption more so than anything. But yeah, that as the setup I think is quite interesting, because once you get to meet the characters, you see that obviously the leader of the Moon Shadow Elves is obviously very angry about what's happened, and that he's obviously allied with the dragons. And the humans are just kind of trying to like defend their kind of position. So like in the middle of all of this, it seems like there's something missing here about some sort of evil actions, whether that be like that maybe the dragons aren't as good as we thought, and there's maybe a more justified reason for why they killed the King of the Dragons. Is that whole legend story true? And is there something that's not being told here? Or like it's difficult because they don't try and present either side as being like flat out evil, in that they want you to feel sympathetic towards the humans being attacked here, but they also want you to feel sympathetic towards the Moon Shadow Elves because they're attacking for a reason. And I assume they're trying to, with mainly having a younger cast of characters with Ezran, Callum and Rayla, to kind of do the whole thing where they're more idealistic, so they will be able to kind of maybe see past the like entrenched hatred of this event that happened in the past and maybe move things forward. Obviously the journey hasn't kind of properly started yet. We haven't seen all the characters properly meet up, but so far it seems at the very least interesting. Callum seems to be much more into like reading and art, rather than what he seems to be learning is kind of basically how to be a knight. He doesn't seem to have skills there at all, even though the head of the guard basically is teaching him Soren. His sister is Claudia, who Callum seems to like. I got a very one-sided view of that. I didn't see anything from Claudia towards him, but completely from him towards her. Obviously, I think we'll see how like he reacts when he sees Rayla, because that's probably if there is a romance that they're going for, perhaps will be that. But we'll have to see how that exactly is. They may not even attempt to go for a romance this early on. What else? I suppose beyond that, like the core of this episode in terms of how the plot happens is mainly Rayla kind of having an opportunity to kill one of the guards, one of the kind of scouts, but refusing to because I suppose she shows kind of like empathy. She sees how scared he is and realizes like, I can't kill him for, I suppose from her perspective, like reasons that I don't particularly like fully understand. Like I get what happened, but like I don't think he did it. And she's basically doing the whole thing of like, potentially it was the action of just a couple of people who led to all of this happening. Should we just mindlessly kill each other? And, they haven't gone into it in that much depth yet, but I get the feeling that that's what they're kind of trying to explore, in that I think when you really get down to it, it will be just a handful of people involved in the kind of nature of how all of this happened. And we'll have to explore why and how all of this actually came to be. But so far, I think so good with just. It seems like this was just this like assassination squad, and they were just going to go in there and take revenge. Her showing this sympathy obviously allows you to see a little bit more, I suppose, humanity in a way, even though it's. I suppose, like, does that word, like, given that it comes from humans, like, how do you actually apply it to a species that isn't human? You get what I mean, though, with that. I suppose I'll talk about the animation at this point. And I want to specifically make a note between the difference between the art style and the animation. I actually like the art style. I think in screenshots, this show actually looks pretty good. I actually think it looks very clean and nice, just taking screenshots of it. The problem is the actual animation itself and how they technically went about doing the motion. I don't like this, and I think it is the weakest part of the show so far. In that, I as of the first episode, watching it twice, I watched the first episode twice, I haven't yet been able to have like a span of like 6-7 minutes when I haven't noticed something weird with the animation. And, it's not like game breaking type thing. It's not like so bad that I just can't watch the show. But it snaps you out of trying to completely invest yourself in everything, because you can clearly see like a slowdown, basically. Like a character just turning their head from here to like looking at the camera. Instead of being this kind of smooth motion, is like do do do. And obviously it's taking place a little bit quicker than that. It's not quite like robotic like that, but it's kind of like that. And then especially in shots where the characters are like further back in the background, and the animation needs them to move actually a bit more on screen, that's when it's a bit more noticeable as well. You can tell that the smoothness of the cleanness of the frames kind of begins to go away, as it's like, it feels like the show's almost struggling to get through the small amount of frames it actually has, and it just doesn't feel as smooth. And the weird thing about it is that, like, I've seen this complaint. This has been one of the common complaints about this show since the first trailer. And it's been weird to see the people defending the show's animation, because like, oh, but it was the intent. This was on purpose. The artists have come out and said that this was specifically their intent for a specific type of look. And it's like, that's fine. But if you still have a problem with it, it's still valid criticism. Like, okay, it's not just this thing where like they cheaped out and did this. This was a purposeful intent. I think they just should have done it normally. I think they should have had more frames in this to make it smoother. Because I think this show would be like really, really, really good if it had smoother animation. As it is, that's the only thing holding the show back for me. Because otherwise, I'm liking the direction. Obviously, like, only one episode in, there's still a lot more to get into. But it's frustrating to see the show kind of being brought down by this technical, artistic intent reason of deciding to be... I think purposefully they decided to go for a low frame rate on it for some reason. Maybe it makes the show look better in screenshots, but it doesn't help the show when it's in motion. And especially, like, we haven't had a ton of action just yet. I'm worried for when the show gets into action, because like you notice, like when you watch the opening sequence and you see like the dragons, the motion of its wings flapping that is not smooth. That should be a smooth motion, but that is very clunky, and a lot of that comes down to just the lack of smoothness in it. So I'm worried about that. In that like I'd hope they maybe like. I haven't seen obviously reaction to the show properly just yet, but I hope they maybe acknowledge some of the criticisms and attempt to improve upon that, because it could end up being just this like major criticism that kind of holds the show back a bit. But yeah, as I said, with the character stuff, otherwise, like, I don't get a lot from Ezran right now. They're just playing him up as like, oh, here he is, like messing around in the castle. He's the prince's son. He's the next in line, basically. He's the human prince. Okay, messing around. Nothing else really about the character I get. Callum Millings is somewhat interesting because he's kind of, in a way, being like forced down one path, but it's clear his talents lie elsewhere. Plus, there's the whole mystery about, like, how did he end up in this situation? What's his origin? That there's something kind of deeper there. Rayla, I like that they're at least immediately presenting this idea of from the other elves' perspective, she's kind of almost betrayed them by doing this, that they're now walking into a, like, fully defended, like, castle, and it's going to be an all-out battle instead of them sneaking around killing people, I assume. And how, I suppose, they decide to deal with her. Does she get punished for this, or what? And then, of course, how does she end up meeting Callum and Ezran? Because obviously they're being, like, sent off somewhere, even though he's not telling them what's happening. Callum obviously finds out. So what keeps them there while this is going on? Not sure. And then what does the overall plan end up being? It's called the Dragon Prince, so I assume the whole them destroying the egg thing was a lie, and that they still have the egg somewhere, or there's some reveal about that comes into play, who the Dragon Prince actually is. But again, I think some more world building will need to be done before we can properly, I think, get to a point where we get what's going on there. So yeah, I'll bring this to an end here. Obviously, I can talk more about the show in the next couple of videos I'm going to do. I enjoyed it. Hasn't quite blown me away just yet, but I think a solid start. The only thing letting the show down to me is the technical choice on the animation, and specifically the smoothness of it. Other than that, I like how the show looks in terms of its art style, and I'm liking what they're doing, at least with, like, some of the characters so far, given that the only real, I suppose, depth they went to in this first episode was Callum and Rayla. So yeah, that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the first episode of The Dragon Prince. Are you going to continue watching on like I am, or did you also have some of the same problems that I did with the animation? But yeah, let me know that in the comments below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.